program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight Judge Tommy Day Wilcox. Well, welcome, Judge. Nice to have you with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Now, we have something in common, do we not? I mean, we are ancestors. What is it that we have in common?
We both have ancestors from Wilcox County, Georgia.
Now, the name Wilcox, I mean, was that named after one of your ancestors?
Several generations back, at least we claim the good ones and not so much the bad ones. They're a little of both on the Wilcox side.
Now, the only problem we have is that once, I think my ancestors were from Rochelle and yours are from Abbeville.
That's exactly correct.
Is that correct? And
the rivalry is still there.
Why is that important? I mean,
well, it's important to know that Abbeville is the county seat of Wilcox County, and Rochelle is not.
You know, my ancestors, when I would go to South Georgia, we discussed this, and without any hesitation, one of my ancestors would say, "I can't believe how they stole that election when they put the county seat in Abbeville," which,
right.
For those that don't know, is right on the Omogie River, but. I guess the folks have gotten over that as time has gone by.
I think the compromise now is that all the schools in the county are in Rochelle, so that's really the only activity there is.
Well, okay.
So Rochelle wins.
Okay, well, maybe not. And it's interesting to know that towns in South Georgia are named after the ones in France. Is that correct?
There's a line there, a railroad line. Yes, you
La
sure
Rochelle and
you could go to Seville, Milan, and Rhine, and
I think Lyon became Lions.
That's correct.
So we have some
Love
of the, we don't call it Lyon, do we?
I don't think so. Okay. It's Lyons, Georgia, all the way, Joseph.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, so you grew up in Wilcox County, and you attended MRSA, did you not?
Correct. I came to MRSA in 1961 and was there 4 years, and then worked for the university for a while, did my time in the United States Navy, back to law school, MRSA again, and then otherwise I've been here in Middle Georgia.
Now, Tommy Day, I think you left out one salient fact about your time at MRSA, and that was your tremendous basketball ability. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know about the ability, but I did play for the Bears, and I'm really excited about it.
Did you dunk it in the old days?
I could not have if they had allowed us to do it.
I think the net was a little lower then, though. Is that right? Was that illegal to dunk in your days?
It was not, even when I was in college, right up to 1965.
It was against the rules to dunk.
It was a technical foul.
Is that right? Well, no, now you didn't play half court, did you?
No, we did not play half court. No,
we did play full that was just the girls.
That was just the women. That's correct.
Women, not girls. Well, okay. So you had your basketball career, and that was interesting. And then you had some time in the Navy. Was that a? I
was on a ship, but good for me. The home port was New Orleans, Louisiana, so I had no complaints.
Yes. Well, I mean, you were in the Caribbean. Were you around the Cuban Missile Crisis? Were you around at that time?
I was not there during the Cuban Missile Crisis, but we were in and out of Guantanamo Bay training other sailors, and so yes. I spent most of my time in the Caribbean.
Now, was it a luxury liner? I mean, you have like a
pool
there?
It was a World War II destroyer.
Oh, no?
It finally, when I came out of the Navy in '69, I think, they put the USS Hyman into scrap, so I had the privilege of going with it.
Was it one of those Fletcher-class destroyers?
It was a Sherman class, but the same thing as a Fletcher class.
What is the difference between
close. Just had to do with the armament. They were all the same size. But no, it was manufactured probably in 90 days or something like that.
Now, was it
was
it pleasant to be on one of those in a storm?
Well, I was Mr. Seasick, so I would say absolutely not.
Okay,
but I survived.
Just checking on your naval career.
No, but I enjoyed it.
And so, really, you've been you're a practicing attorney, and then you've been a judge, a Superior Court judge, and I think you're a senior judge now.
That's correct. I was on the active bench for a little over 24 years, and then 5 years ago, at age 64, I decided to become a senior judge, so the last 5 years I've been in that category.
Now, what is the difference between an active judge and a senior judge? What does that mean exactly?
Well, the active judge, of course, every day you go to work. As a senior judge,
oh, really?
you may, well, supposed
to.
Yeah, supposed to. As a senior judge, you come to work only if there is a need for extra judges. And so I would say over the 5 years, so far, it's been, for me anyway, not many cases to try.
Yes.
So I've done some arbitration and mediation
Yes.
as well as doing senior judge. But as it turns out, as most of the viewers will know, at least in the Macon Judicial Circuit, probably Houston as well, our Chief Judge, Martha Christian, has resigned effective December the 31st.
Yes.
And so the governor will appoint a replacement, but it'll probably be March the 1st or somewhere along there before the new active judge comes on. And so I have been asked to come back January and February and assume some of my old duties, at least to keep the ship going while there's a vacancy there.
Well,
so I've got to get back into
Well,
it.
maybe this would be a good time to discuss a little bit the judicial system and how things work, and just to go through an explanation of that. I mean, maybe you could tell me too. I mean, we've got different levels of I guess, judicial authority, or different state court and superior court, and I don't know. What are all these courts?
Well, you have 4 counties in our area. Houston County does have a state court, and they have a new judge, Judge Ashton, who I just met, not Ashford, who I just met two weeks ago, I guess, took Judge Richardson's place. We have a state court in Bibb County, which is Judge Bill Adams. He's been there a number of years, and most of the viewers will remember Taylor Phillips. He's still a senior judge, and at 90 years old, I might say, is still trying cases.
Wow, that's good.
But Peach and Crawford do not have a state court, so that's one level of court, and then you have the superior court in every county in the state of Georgia. And we're in a circuit with 3 counties. Houston's just 1 county. And every county in the state has what's called a magistrate court. So that's sort of the level it begins. And it would also be at the level of the municipal court, which I think there is a municipal court of Warner Robins. I know there is in Macon as well.
Yes.
So you can, everywhere you turn at the courthouse, you might run into a
Lots
judge,
of, lots
so to
of
speak.
judges. Well,
different jurisdictions.
Now, what happens, they have the geographical distribution of courts, but is there a certain kind of cases that each court would try, or is it why would one go to one court and not another?
Right, no, that's a very good question. In the state court, they have jurisdiction on the criminal side of misdemeanor cases only, meaning that the sentence for whatever the crime charged would have to be 12 months or less.
Yes.
And the superior court then takes the felony cases, which would handle some misdemeanors, but all the way up, of course, through life imprisonment or the death penalty.
Yes.
On the civil side, almost anything can come into a state court, either in Houston County or Bibb County, except for the fact that domestic relations cases, or divorce cases as some people call them, are only in superior court. So that's one big difference there.
Yes. And so pretty much, I mean, I think one of the interesting things about the American judicial system is it's quite different than the British system. Is that correct? And I mean, and I think you've at least had a en passant acquaintance with some of the people that have come through the Inns of Court in London. And what are some differences, and what are the Inns of Court?
Well, first of all, the Inns of Court, and you and I have seen each other in London, so that's why you know that I've been there.
Yes.
Exactly.
What is all that?
The Inns of Court are, if you go through law school, let's say, in Great Britain, at the end of law school, you can become a solicitor, or what we would call here an attorney or a lawyer. But if you want to be a barrister, that is a person that would argue a case before a jury or before a judge, then you have to go to one of the 4 Inns of Court. So it's an additional, I guess, training after a law school.
Yes.
And so pretty competitive or you have to decide if you want to be a barrister, first of all. It's pretty competitive to get into one of the Inns of Court, but different from our system in that what they do is they have the same type of studies, but they have certain meals they have to carry together, and there's a lot more,
I understand.
training.
I hope I'm not going to speak out of class on this, but I think they drink some wine there. Do they not?
It's possible that the law student, I'm sure no law students in the U.S. ever have a drink, but of wine or otherwise.
They do that, do they not sometimes?
Right,
yes.
but it's an interesting system. I think probably you would say that there's more training or more education to become an attorney in the U.S. than in Great Britain, but it's a different system altogether. And of course, with the judiciary, one thing you will not find in Great Britain is a judge running for office or an elected judge.
Really?
They're all appointed.
Now, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I forget in the 24 years, every 4 years I ran for election, and that would not have been true, of course, if I had been in Great Britain and been on the bench. That's
That's sort of an American trait. I mean, it's happened it was not an instantaneous thing either, was it? When the
No.
when the U.S. Became an independent country from our British cousins.
Sure, there were definitely two schools of thought. I think certainly by the time Jackson became president, he was all for all judges being elected.
Yes.
Whereas others, the Jeffersons and early on, thought that judges ought to be appointed. In the end, it was a dual system. The federal judges are all appointed, as you know, and all the state judges around the country are elected
Really?
in some form or fashion.
Yes.
Not all states elect judges the same manner, but there is some type of election.
Now, Andrew Jackson was a pretty interesting guy. I believe he was an attorney, but
That's
as well as a duelist.
That's right. That's right. But he didn't trust king and country, so he didn't want the president appointing or any government official
that's
appointing
interesting.
judges.
And so we've got you've experienced this system. Are there some pros and cons to elections of judges versus being appointed, or pros
Well, when
and
I
cons?
first came on the bench, it was rare to have a contested election.
Yes.
So once you were either appointed as a new judge in the Macon Judicial Circuit would be, or you ran the election for the first time, it was rare to have a contested election for a judge on the
Yes.
Superior Court side, and I think the state court side as well. Not so much now.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, no. So it's quite possible now to have opposition, and I think folks know that. I would say that the election, of course, is a way, if a judge is not performing correctly, for the electorate to respond to
yes.
that. On the other hand, the downside of the election is if you're going to run for judge, you have to get out and raise a whole lot of money.
Yes.
And once somebody gives you a check to have you run for an office, you would hope that they would hope that you would remember them when they come in the courtroom. That's not the way it works, but that's the way people think, and it's just not that part of it I don't like.
Well, I mean, maybe we can talk a little about that. I mean, I've heard different opinions. I mean, we'd like to have a democratic country, and I think Andrew Jackson didn't want a system where I guess the regular people were just being put in this judicial arrangement. And the judges were being capricious and arbitrary and there for life and wouldn't understand the real deal. And so,
right. Yeah, I'm not opposed to judges being elected. They're just, as I say, they're ups and downs.
What about, I mean, just as an observer of this, I mean, is it worrisome that when these elections occur, that people that have a vested interest in a political, or I guess judicial outcomes would be the major contributors, or maybe that's not the case? Is that troublesome?
Well, I think most of the contributions would come from those people that are practicing law. But in the other side of it is at least the last round of elections up in our circuit, I think some of them had to raise about twice the amount of money they would make in 1 year. So
really?
That hopefully you don't have to run again after the first year. But no, as I say, there are ups and downs for it. Everybody has to report, of course, who contributes and that sort of thing, and there are limits. But as I say, that part of it would be worrisome to me and still is.
Well, now, just to reassure the audience and just in general the American people, as such as they are, I mean, there are people, the judges are held to a very high standard of conduct, and even if they've taken these contributions, I mean, aren't they? What happens if a judge seems to run amok or being unduly influenced? Or
right.
What goes on to prevent that?
Sure, there is a Judicial Qualifications Commission. I've never heard of a case being brought against a judge because he accepted some, let's say, contribution.
Yes.
At least in the state of Georgia.
Yes.
It's never happened. Maybe in some of the other states that I'm not aware of. So it's really not been an issue at the front.
Yes.
It's just something that always bothered me, that when I was at least running for office, if I never did have to ask anybody for a contribution, but I would have felt uncomfortable doing it. I would have done it the only way you can get elected. But so anyway, but as I say, the plus side overweighs that, in that if a judge is not performing to what at least the majority of the community thinks is appropriate, then that's a way to remove them from the bench.
Now, is that, I mean, just to look at the judicial system in Georgia, is that a common event to be removed from the bench? It must happen occasionally, and I mean, how does that happen? I mean,
right.
what would
well,
occur?
I think if you just look the mid-1800s, I suppose, the Macon Judicial Circuit, to the best of my knowledge, no sitting judge has ever been put out of office as a result of an election. So that's a long history, which suggests to you, and I think, I'm sure the same is true of the Houston Judicial Circuit, because actually Houston County was in the Macon Judicial Circuit for many years, up until I guess the early 60s or late 50s, and so sometime in that time frame. And so really that sort of answers the question in and of itself, it seems to me. It doesn't happen often, but at least the judge always knows that there's a possibility somebody will run against him
I mean,
or her.
Well, you know, the integrity of the judicial system is such an important event. I mean, seemingly everything is on the up and up pretty much. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it is, and I can say, I don't know outside of our circuit in the House Judicial Circuit, but yeah, I don't know that there's ever been a question raised about that in our two circuits.
Yes,
and I'm proud of that, actually.
Yes.
I have to say that.
Well, good. And so, you know, have you seen in your career, have you seen any trends in the way that I guess the legal profession is operating or functioning, or any things that are happening up or down, or is it fair to ask questions about that?
No, it's fair. I think the issue is professionalism. If there's been any change that I've seen over the 30 years as a judge and 10 years practicing law, it was a very collegial thing to begin with. That is, you would go to the courthouse, everybody knew everybody.
Yes.
Now, not so much, and I guess it's competition, competitive, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
But a lot of people, particularly judges, comment from time to time that the
Yes.
lawyers are not as collegial as they once were.
Yes.
Maybe that's good, maybe it's bad, but
Yes.
that's the only issue I've seen.
Now, one of the things, at least I've observed in medicine, I mean, we've had this changing, I guess I would use the phrase workforce. I'm not sure what the right word is, but just we now have lots and lots of very nice ladies that are our colleagues, and I think that's had some impact on our health care. That's in many good ways.
Right.
Is there a similar situation in law school? I think the medical school enrollments are about 50% female these days. I don't know about law.
I think law is at least 50% women, if not more, and indeed my daughter is an attorney.
Well, there you go. That happens.
So
well,
you would have to think that I would say, and I certainly do, I think it's a good thing.
I've got a few nieces that are doctors, so there you go. So it happens.
That's why I hate to lose Judge Martha Christian off of our bench. She's been there for 17 years, but no, I think more and more women, obviously, are getting into the practice of law, and personally, I think it's a good thing.
Yes, it must be stressful in a way to try and have a family. I've observed that, just having this career, and it's very tough, isn't it?
Well, almost all the attorneys were men when I came along, so I really, other than watching my daughter have to raise a family as well as being an attorney, but yeah, it's a little more difficult, I would think, sometimes for the women, but fortunately, unlike, let's say, my era and your era, Joe Sam, there are a lot of men that are more than willing to take on more of the duties at home than Dr. Robinson and Tommy Day Wilcox were willing to. And so that's the truth of the matter, I'm afraid.
I'll toast them if they're out there. I get a little toast. So a little toast.
I toast the men that are doing that.
That's a good story. Well, now, just to ask a few questions about the way that things happen here, we have jury selection. And so pretty much aren't all, maybe you could say, are all criminal cases tried with a jury, or?
Yes, if there's a plea of not guilty, they can waive a jury, of course, and have just the judge try it, or what's called a non-jury trial, or, of course, through plea bargain or otherwise, they can plead guilty. But otherwise, yes, everybody is guaranteed the right to a trial by jury of 12 persons to decide their case.
Now, that includes divorce trials, too, does it not?
Absolutely. The state of Georgia, is the best of my recollection, is the only state, though, in the United States of America where in a domestic relations situation you can ask for and get a trial by jury. I'm not so sure if that's the best of results, but that's the way the law is, and I followed the law. But fortunately, both on the criminal side and on the domestic relations side, there are very few cases that actually get to have to be tried before a jury. Of course, obviously more criminal than domestic. Yes. I think most domestic cases through now, a course of mediation, or they resolve or settle their case as opposed to trying to explain it to 12 people who may not ever grasp what's going on.
Now, there's a lot of, this is a rather loaded topic about the jury system.
Right.
In some countries, the jury system is just not there. So I think if you're in continental Europe, you're just a judge issue, and and so are there some good things and bad things about the jury system?
Well, I support trial by jury myself, because I must say, and I hear comments about it one way or the other, but in 30 years and trying hundreds of cases, I would have to, looking back, there would be very few times that I would have disagreed with what the jury did.
Yes.
And if so, of course, there were 12 of them deciding it rather than me as one fact finder. And so, no, I still fully support the trial by jury for those who want it. I really do.
Yes. Now, one of the things that sort of is there's a big effort, and justice is so important in the country. I don't think our country could exist without the notion that we're a just country. We try and be that way. We haven't always been successful, but the right to appeals that's a big thing. It seems to me, at least from television or whatever. I mean, you might see someone led away and changed from the courthouse in some kind of national trial, and their lawyer will say, we plan to appeal.
Right.
Now, what exactly does that mean? And are any comments about the appeal process? And I mean, could you you can't ask, can you, the appellate court to overturn just a verdict of a jury easily? I mean,
no, usually it's some question of law. That is, either the judge explaining the law to the jury made a mistake, or perhaps the judge didn't allow in some evidence that should have been allowed in. But generally it's a legal issue that's up on appeal, not a fact question, because the fact question is left, generally speaking, almost in every situation, to the jury.
Yes.
But yes, there are, of course, any case is subject to an appeal that goes to a jury. But the truth is, very few of the cases are reversed, as we say, or turned around.
Yes.
But sometimes there are very close questions of law,
Yes.
and obviously, to me, there was a reason why we have the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals of the state of Georgia, and that is to make sure that at least on a statewide basis, there's at least some level playing ground once you leave the trial court. So, good idea of appeals.
Now, just to get into the complexities of this, so we have a state judicial system, we have a federal one, and you can't easily just hop out from one to the other, can you?
No.
You just for the fun of it on an appeal. Is that fair? I mean,
right. That's right. If you're from out of state and you get sued in a superior court, let's say a state court, then yes, you can in most circumstances remove your case to the federal court.
Yes.
But otherwise, there are certain cases that have to be brought in federal
Yes.
court and some brought in the
Yes.
state court.
Yes.
And for crimes, of course, there are obviously federal statutes or laws.
Yes.
If you violate those, you're in federal court.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're in state court.
Now, I know that, Tommy Day, you've befriended a number of British judges, or you're familiar at least with some of the way that works.
Right. I do
so
like
you
their
don't
system.
wear one of those wigs, is that correct? Why
No,
do they,
I'd like
why
to
do
have
they-
a wig,
why
but
do
I
they-
don't.
Why do they wear those wigs? What's the deal?
I think for them, the whole idea is the heritage of their system. And so
Yes.
it goes way back, although there is now lots of talk about the judges not having to wear wigs, and
Yes.
Who knows, they may very well come to that situation. But yes, I think it's just like wearing the robe. I mean, the reason we wear black robes is
Right.
because, well, when Queen Victoria's husband died, she decreed that everybody would wear a black robe. We were wearing
Really?
all kinds of robes. And so we today in America are using black robes, and it goes all the way back to our British heritage. And so I would have liked to have had perhaps a red robe or
Well,
a
I
blue
mean,
robe. but
maybe some appropriate stripes or some kind of more fade. It's a little grim, isn't it? to have those
That's
black
exactly
robes?
right. But no, I wouldn't have been in court long if I had tried to
Well,
spruce up my
no,
robe.
I could well understand that. Well, now, in the UK, the jury system is not as prevalent here, particularly on civil cases. Is there a difference there?
Absolutely. In the UK, as I understand it, I guess slander or defamation libel, I think would be the proper word, is the only time on the civil side that you can get a trial by jury. Of course, they
Yes.
wouldn't even think about in a domestic case
Yes.
giving you a trial, but neither in let's say a personal injury case, which we try a lot of those in the U.S. You don't get a jury trial on that in the UK. Now, on the other hand, it comes to criminal court, yes, they're
Yes.
guaranteed a trial by jury, and whether it's Old Bailey or one of the courts outside of London, everybody, if they want to have a trial by jury, they can have that.
Yes. Now, I'll ask another arcane question. What is the role of the House of Lords in the British judicial system? Is there some kind of funny connection there?
Right. They of course, finally now in the last 3 years, after all these many years of their history in the judicial system, they have a Supreme Court.
Oh, do they?
They didn't before that. They had the Court of Appeal and Ordinary in the House of Lords. So the ultimate appeal was to the members, or 11 members on the bench in the House of Lords, and then the entire House of Lords had to vote on the verdict, that whatever they decided on appeal, which was usually
Really?
just a rubber stamp. But I mean, they would have a session and everybody would say, Robinson versus Wilcox, this is the
yes,
decision,
yes,
vote yea or nay.
yes,
And so
yes.
totally different. But now they do have a Supreme Court, of course, appointed by
Yes.
the government. But so they're finally coming there. At least the nomenclature is the
Yes,
same as
yes,
ours,
yes.
and nothing else.
Now, I've heard, in medicine we have different discussions about this shortage or oversupply of doctors, or doctors going the right place or the wrong place. What is the situation in law? I mean, are there too many lawyers? Are we getting lawyers in the wrong place or the right place? Or any comments about that?
Well, the law schools continue to turn out attorneys, that's for sure. But it's a free market, and the recent downturn, particularly in the real estate area,
yes.
I would just have to say has thinned the ranks.
Oh, really?
So when we say there are too many lawyers, you can say that, but the truth of the matter is, after a period of time, if you're not making a living, you're not going to be a lawyer anymore. And so it sort of takes care of itself.
Yes.
There's no, other than those who work for the government, and I'll put me in that category,
yes.
There's no government support for attorneys, so they either make it or break it on their own.
Yes. Well, another issue, I was just getting near our end of our conversation here, but after you go on the bench, is there any kind of particular, what happens? Do you go to a little, prep session about what to do, or do you
hopefully,
just give you the hammer and turn you loose, or what happens?
Well, hopefully you've had some experience trying cases, so you've watched judges in action.
Yes.
I'll first begin with that.
Yes.
But yes, in fact, in January, just coming up at the University of Georgia, during the seminar for all the judges, it was about a 3-day training session for those judges who just came on the bench in the last year.
Yes.
So yes, there is training available, and it happens twice a year in Georgia. But most of it is hopefully learned from colleague to colleague.
Yeah, so in general, I mean, you're not going to become a judge without a substantial amount of actual courtroom experience. And that's,
hopefully.
You'd hope that, although with the electoral system, that doesn't have to be the case.
Exactly. You have to, in Georgia, the only requirement is that you be a member in good standing of the state bar and had been a member for at least 7 years.
Yes.
Once you pass that window, then of course you can either be elected or appointed.
Yes.
Regardless of your experience.
And so the appointment process, you mentioned earlier that most judges in the old days were appointed. How did that work? They didn't initially, were not initial contested election? Or?
Well, I think you get to the bench two ways. One, like, for example, when I decided to retire, I just waited till the end of my term. I retired, and a number of people ran for my position.
Yes.
On the other hand, let's say Judge Christian, who is leaving to go to North Georgia because her husband has got a job there as a district attorney. It's a good move for them, and also a good move for the folks up in North Georgia. To replace her will have to be an appointment by the governor.
Yes.
But people do apply. They have to go before a judicial nominating commission, and they screen the candidates. But it is the governor's decision. But the next time for an election, that person has to run. So you're not appointed for sometimes a very short period of time.
Well, I'm going to throw you the last little pitch. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to say whether it's your comments about becoming a lawyer. I mean, what do you think about that for a young person?
Well, I still recommend it as a profession. Obviously, I was delighted that my daughter's been practicing for 5 or 6 years, so I watched her career. So anyone interested in in law, I would still say, good idea, go to law school.
Well, Judge Wilcox, thank you so much for coming. I'm not going to hold that Abbeville connection against you.
Well, we'll decide that off camera.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.